Evening.
Evening. How are we doing?
Oh, good. Got some stuff done. Picked up a book I ordered. Um, yeah. Went to Aikido. Had a friend come round. Plenty of
You went
chatting
out for
with
dinner,
him.
didn't you?
Yeah. He was pointing out you need to get out more, which is true. And so we went out for dinner.
Oh, that's good.
Yeah. He
Just made
also needed to
progress
get
this
out more.
week. Wow, that's also helpful, I suppose. Two birds, one stone.
Yeah.
It's good when you find someone like that who is in a similar position to you and also wants to, do well.
Hmm.
Someone who you can, you know, make a deal with where, say, like, oh, I want to go to the gym and he wants to go to the gym. So we'll do it together and then you can hold each other to account. It's a rare thing.
Yeah, I hadn't conceived of this in that sense. It was more a spontaneous thing than a thought out um, thing like
Mm.
that. But
Oh, I
yeah.
know.
I guess we do
Oh, I've
that in
had
the
a
intellectual sense for each other.
lot, but that's good. Few and far between.
Hmm.
I've had a good week as well. Been spending more time in the real world. Watched a documentary with my wife. Uh, Monday, Tuesday night, something like that. The Social Dilemma.
Hmm.
Have you seen?
No, I haven't.
No, worth watching. It's on the problems with social media, effectively, but it can be expanded to a lot of addictive parts of technology in general. And from a result of that, we've been making changes in our life, in our family routine, to cut out a lot of those things. And it's been going really well. I'm quite happy. So it's been on my mind a bit. Um, should I go into that more?
Hmm.
What do you think?
Might have a look at that movie later.
Yeah, it's definitely worth a watch. There's a couple of them, but I think that's the best one. Um, Mostly on obvious side of things, which is the addictive problem that these systems are designed to take our attention. So it was talking mostly about social media, which is capitalizing on the human need to socialize with others for survival. And my brain extended it to things like video games as well, which is capitalizing on the human need to achieve goals and make progress towards them and gain skill, both of which are obviously pointless due to their lack of real world effect. Because of that, I've been trying to cut them out of my life. Um, Not completely. I never try and cut anything out completely, but I have an addictive personality, and so does my wife. So once we recognise that that's what this was an addiction, then we bounded it. We put limits on it, and we've had one of the best weeks we've had in years because of it. And I'm, really excited to see where things go from here.
Hmm. That sounds good.
Yeah, it's been great. More time with my kids. They're happier. I'm enjoying spending more time with them rather than being, frustrated by them.
Hmm.
Amazing how you can feel the pull of it though.
Hmm.
It is 100% an addictive thing, more than I expected.
Yeah, I get a bit of that with oh, basically YouTube and or put son to bed. Okay, I've got space. And there's the almost reflex pull out phone and watch videos,
Yeah.
or sit down and watch videos, and then, oh, I should go to bed now. And it's like, have I watched
Yeah.
anything worthwhile? No. What did I
Yeah.
want to do instead? Read books?
Have I enjoyed this time? No. Mm.
Hmm.
And did it feel like, you know, no time has passed? It just goes straight away.
Hmm. Yeah.
Yeah, I read a book in the last week. I'm quite happy about, and I'm halfway through another one,
Hmm.
which I've just been really enjoying. I've just got the fire going, sitting on the couch, spending time with the kids. It's been great. If anything, I want to limit it more now, not less. I find myself annoyed when the, scheduled time to watch a TV show or whatever comes around.
Hmm.
I'm just not satisfied with it. I used to be bored by anything else, and now I'm bored by it, which is interesting.
Yeah. You're waking up and having a life instead. It's more interesting.
Yeah. The biggest thing that I've found personally is making my phone unappealing.
Hmm.
Like, I don't think that there's anything wrong with having a place that's dedicated for a thing. Like, I have a TV room or a media room, as it's going to be, which is where we come to sit down on our, 3 nights a week for 2 hours to watch a movie or play some games together or something. And that's, you know, like the station where that thing lives. And then you leave the room and close the door. I actually quite like that. I think the biggest problem with the phone is it's always on you. So
Hmm.
the temptation to just grab it, grab it, grab it is always there. But we managed to fix that quite a lot, removing majority of those apps or making them hard to get to or annoying to get to. And I've changed some settings on my phone so it's black and white now. So it doesn't have, visually interesting colors that catch attention. Just this black and white thing with a bunch of grey buttons on it that all look effectively the same, that do the functions that I need. And I love it. Great.
Yeah, because I think the thing that's holding me back from moving my phone away from me is, at least the conscious aspect of it, is that I'm worried about someone needing to contact me and not being contactable, which
Mm,
there are valid aspects of that in the sense of I have a son who's at school. But there's also the wider world of what if a friend wants to contact me, and then a lot of the time I'll send a message to someone and they might not reply for a week. And it's like, okay, and that's not really a problem. Yeah.
I feel like that second thing's something different. Um, yeah, like for YouTube, for example, I had the same problem with you. I find it incredibly addictive to just scroll,
Hmm.
watch stuff, or mostly just watch the previews of things. I just removed it from my home screen. We have different. I have an iPhone, and you have an Android for the listeners. And now that my phone's black and white, if I flick over to the where all of my apps are, it's just sort of a wall of grey, weird looking icons because they don't have the right colors, and
Hmm.
none of it's appealing. Like I don't have the drive to go and find it, even though I know that it's there.
That's
Um,
interesting that that
yeah,
subtle difference makes a difference.
yeah. Actually, I think this is one of the benefits. I hated the screen of when they added it to iPhone, which is like the all apps or whatever.
Hmm.
It's not. It's organized into like groups of categories of apps rather than just an A to Z list, or it's not rearrangeable or anything. So I can take it off the home screen and it's sort of over there out of the way. To find stuff in there is actually kind of annoying.
Hmm.
It's kind of annoying to find stuff, and I never actually know exactly where it is in there, which I find great. So I've taken to um, using search for everything. On my home screen, I have 4 buttons, no, 3 buttons that are grey and custom icons that look identical besides the symbol. And then I have the weather display for the day because I need that for choosing clothing for the farm. And anything else I need to search for by name to get to, which works well because when I need to find something, it's not a muscle memory to go and do it. I can find it pretty easy, but I don't have that reflex of doing the muscle memory actions to get to the place and open the thing that gives me the dopamine hit.
Yeah.
And there's no dopamine hit because my phone's black and white now. Everything's grayscale.
Yeah, I'm just looking up oh, the equivalent apps to do similar things. Which one do you use?
It's just system settings.
Ah, there's something to make it black and white in system settings. Android will
For
be
me, yeah,
different.
we have accessibility settings. So there's a mountain of things that I can change the way the phone behaves, and that's one, color filters. And there's all kinds of like, color filters for people who are colorblind or whatever else. And in there's a grayscale color filter.
Hmm.
I also turned on reduced motion for people who get motion sickness from devices or epilepsy. And because of that, now there's no like fancy loading animations or switching animations when switching apps. I press a button and the thing just flashes on the screen. Like there's no transition cut, no fade, nothing like that.
Yeah, I found
Which
it.
I think is also great because that takes away any kind of like nice feeling from doing an action. Phones all function now. That's great. I love it.
Yeah.
I've been reading and
'Cause,
I've fallen in love with reading rather than being annoyed by it when I've been trying to do it recently.
yeah,
I've spent probably 15 times as much time with my kids in the last week than I have in the last, you know, weeks for the last 6 months, and enjoyed it.
yeah. Just wondering about making my um main computer black and white, possibly apart from or just a black and white profile, so that all the windows and things are black and white apart from no, the internet will still be color. Maybe I can better. Hmm. Yeah, I'll have to think about that. But I also have a something pointed out to me that there may be unresolved things regarding my ex, and I was hiding from facing that through distracting myself with stuff,
Do
visual
tell.
visual media and stuff. And it's like, what does the word hate mean? And it's a very semantic argument, but I felt like there were versions of the word that may be applicable to the emotions I feel towards my ex. Some sense of bitterness and whether that bitterness directed towards her, particularly on a subconscious level, may impact future relationships and potential for relationships.
Oh, that's without a doubt.
Hmm.
Um,
Sort of still tied
hmm.
down.
Yeah, yes, but that's not something that's just easily fixable. That's
Hmm.
something that I think you can reduce the impact of drastically, but never goes away. I think when you've been scarred by a romantic partner, a betrayal, I don't think that that's something that you can just get over. I think you get less sensitive to the triggers that trigger those emotions, and the emotions that are triggered become less intense over time, particularly with contemplation and working on it with a new partner. Obviously, that's not what you can do, but I don't think it's something that is wholly curable.
I think the point I would try and aim at, rather than curing it as such, to be able to recognize it so that it is not whatever is there is not behind the scenes pulling levers in my brain without me being aware of it.
Yeah, it definitely has to be conscious.
Mm.
That's the greatest thing I found in my marriage is becoming conscious and acknowledging out loud with my partner all of the triggers, I suppose, scars that I have on various subjects. rather than just getting upset or whatever, however it is that one acts out. For your partner to know that and for you to say it out loud changes the dynamic of it from one of annoyance to sympathy, understanding, and trying to help.
Hmm. I feel like there are this now it's a complete statement, but there are some people who would be upset by that as partners, but they're really the ones you'd want to filter out. So if you
Yes.
start,
Yeah,
well,
because that's narcissism.
yeah, if you're stating your own case, if you're standing up for yourself, this isn't. I guess if you're standing your ground, you're not taking ground from them, but if you're standing your ground and that is something that bothers them, then that's a red flag.
Yeah. Or it's the same thing of, how do you say it? Saying I got upset by something is not saying that you did something wrong. And a
Hmm.
person who takes the statement of that hurt me to mean you wanted to hurt me and you did it on purpose and you're bad. It's like, no, we
Or
need
who
to work
says
on
it in
something
that
there.
way to start with.
Yeah, I didn't say that. But if you take it that way, then that's a problem.
Well, that was the
I'm not
big
saying
thing about my ex, that everything that anyone did
that.
to
Yeah,
that hurt
that's,
her was their fault.
yeah, yeah. And there's the other side of that, which is if you get hurt, that assumption that you blame them. Does that make
Hmm.
sense?
Yeah.
Something else to be careful of. It's also, I also think you owe it to your future partner to be aware of these things, to be actively working on them, and to be able to give her a heads up on what she's getting into.
Hmm.
In the dating phase, these things should come to light. Not first date, naturally, but at some point, a sort of a sorry, I got upset at that because I have this issue for this reason from this memory. Um, and that, yeah, and that's very important for a partner to know. Also, it'll help you filter out a whole class of people who take the, you know, oh, he's being vulnerable, therefore he's weak, therefore I'm not interested in him. You don't want them either.
Hmm. Yeah. It's interesting oh, not
To find
to
the right partner, you need to be selective.
yeah. I don't think this is running away from the subject, but another thing did occur to me that
Okay,
about
okay.
the more I work in this direction, which has been broadly characterized by trying to develop myself into, or develop the aspects of myself that I need to in order to attract the partner who's right for me, the less desperate I feel for said partner.
Mm, yes, I remember that. I remember that. It wasn't actually long before I found the partner that I had that feeling, that switch. It was a strange feeling, very strange feeling,
Hmm. Is it,
because for the first time, you're the one doing the selecting. In saying no to some, you're A, telling yourself that you're valuable enough to say no to them, and B, the urgency is gone because you're not desperate.
oh, I wonder if it's in the wider sort of pattern of behavior sense, your pattern is desperately wanting. So you
Yeah,
you
not
continue that
particularly attractive.
itself. Well, that and also it self reinforces that you're generating a
Mm.
pattern of desperately wanting. This is slightly more abstract, I guess,
Oh, no,
but
I agree with you. I see where you're going.
yeah. Whereas if you are actively selecting, which includes rejecting, it's not wholesale rejection, but it's um what's the right word? Judgment comes to mind, but that has connotations as well. It's discernment, active discernment, which includes
Mm,
a yes and a no, not just a please yes, please someone yes.
yeah.
It's yeah,
Yeah,
what
nothing's more attractive than a desperate man.
more unattractive.
Yes, sorry. Well, and the inverse is true. Nothing's more attractive than a man who says, no, not you. A woman who thinks she's all that has a moment of, intense contact with a man who's got that sort of, I don't know how he described it. Let's say body language down to the point of being noticed and triggering the parts of the brain that are desirable. And then says, no, you, not you.
Hmm.
It can't help but elevate you in status above the other person. I mean, how could it not? Is what you're saying to them. And pique their interest and then say no, which is, by the way, what women do to men, if you hadn't noticed.
Hmm.
Um, that's saying, yes, I am valuable, and no, I am not easy. And that's because I'm more valuable than you think, simply based on look. But the man who says yes straight away all the time is saying, I have no value and therefore I have no selection criteria. Please, anyone. Not likely to be successful.
Just thinking about the unconscious manifestations of the pattern versus the conscious potential game ability of the pattern. That if people are acting unconsciously, then those who then acts as a reasonable uh, what was it, proxy for social standing, where those who have standing in their experience to be able to say yes or no or pick and choose the woman they want, those are the ones who will say no. Whereas when you bring consciousness and awareness into the equation and the potential for perceiving and building your own self worth independent of the rest of the society, then it's it's a way to climb up the outside, if that makes sense. You can bypass the line, and instead of stand or fighting for your place in line, you sort of walk around and stand in a different line. That's you. That is your line.
Winning at your game.
Yeah.
It's a great line, that. I love it. Yeah. I see no reason to need to get the success criteria is required to therefore project the subconscious cues of success when you can manifest them consciously and train your subconscious to manifest them.
That also
You can
sounds
just
like
be,
putting on a mask, though, phrased that way.
well, yes, but if you also value yourself, period, then it's not false. If you
Hmm.
understand your own value, even if the rest of the world doesn't, and you figure out how to consciously project that and then train your subconscious to do it, that doesn't seem mask like to me.
Hmm. Yeah, I think the manner that I'm approaching it, sorry, the link between the way in which I perceive myself and the manner in which I project myself is more subconscious.
Yeah.
So I achieve the projection by changing the self perception.
Yeah, I don't think you can do one without the other.
It'll always slip through.
Yeah.
Mm,
If you don't have the value of yourself within yourself, then you'll fail at the attempt to do it consciously
Mm. Yep, that makes sense.
because you can't fake it that good. I was just thinking about the statement of men saying no. Women literally say no. We all know. But for men, it's different. Men's version of saying no is not saying no. Mm, it's a few things. I think one is not going the whole way straight away. So, you meet a girl, you strike it up, and then you instantly ask her out on to be your girlfriend or something. That's instant fail because you went too fast. Not making the leap straight away, but having there be attention. So subconsciously indicating attraction, but not, and confidence, most importantly, but not making it explicit straight away. It might be something that would be difficult for you to work on because you very want to say everything consciously. Having there be cues, having there be tension, having it build slowly, not running straight at it like you're desperate. I think that's one half of things. So that accounts for the mysterious thing women find attractive, and it's all throughout storytelling. It's an attractive man and he's mysterious, he's somewhat interested, but somewhat not, somewhat aloof, closed off, but entertaining her. And I think the other half is comedy. If you're afraid to make fun of her, it's because you're afraid that she'll leave from being upset. But the man who makes fun of the woman is not afraid to have her leave, which is why it's one of the highest predictors of attraction for women is humor. That's my guess,
Hmm.
at least. I just sort of on the spot.
I don't like making fun of anyone. I suspect the equivalent in my mind would be saying potentially unpopular opinions or asking potentially tough questions. Probably more the potentially unpopular opinions.
Okay. Why do you not? Okay. I will ask, why do you not like making fun of people? And I will also say, if this is a thing that in general women seem to want, why do you think that you can set up criteria or say that you have other things that are better to get around doing the thing you don't like?
Hmm. I think it is in a similar category of unprocessed childhood decisions as some of the other things.
See that?
The key memory that sticks with it is what was it? One of some of my cousins live on the west coast, and in a previous conversation, he'd made a joke about I think it was my brother's, or was it my way of speaking? No, it would have been mine. My way of speaking by saying, "Oh, you use too much big words. I'm from the west coast," or something along those lines. Just self-depreciating humor while poking fun at my um, manner of speaking. And I brought that out in another conversation, and he was slightly sort of nonplussed about it. Like, oh, you don't need to make fun of me just because I'm from the West Coast. Like, no, that's what you said. And then I laughed, and then I felt bad because um, he looked a bit hurt, or yeah,
Do you think that's genuine?
it hadn't landed as a joke, That
Do you think that his reaction was genuine?
I felt that it was, and then I felt all
Mm,
guilty about it.
okay. Maybe it was. I think it's also worth noting that I've seen it in people many times who can play that game for status. That their making fun of you is acceptable because they're above you in the social status and they're putting you down, which is what guys do to each other. But if you make fun of them, then you're being cruel and that's unacceptable. And they're using it as a shame tactic to also put you down as a power play.
Because the
I'm not saying that's what's happened, but
yeah,
it just strikes me.
with social peers of similar background, there's definitely some good-natured ribbing that I engage in, but it's in the I'm making a joke on you, you'll make a joke on me, we all laugh.
Right, that's what I mean.
Hmm.
That's what I'm referencing. That spirit needs to also be applied to your prospective partner.
Okay, because when you said sort of making fun of, to me that referred to the
Yeah, not ridiculing.
yeah, yeah, it referred to something more along those lines.
Okay. Teasing would be the best word, I
Hmm.
suppose. Having that humor, throwing a tiny hint of sexuality into it is a powerful mix. And these aren't just for you and for anyone listening. These kinds of tips, I don't like pickup artists. I don't like people who do the manipulative, do these 6 things, and then you'll get the woman, and then leave because I think that's disgusting. Um, yeah, I think it's worth noting in these conversations when I give mild advice, which I still think is ridiculous that I'm the one doing that. I'm a long way from where I was. I used to be rather pathetic, and now I'm not. Anyway, um, I'm the kind of person who thinks you should find one woman for your life and that you should be a virgin when you meet her and you should marry her. I'm that kind of person. So when I say things that are intended to help a person attract a partner, I'm 100% not a pickup artist. And I don't want anyone listening to be. I just want to feel like it's important to make that statement. And in saying that, yeah, these things are not tips to help getting a woman be easy. These are things that I think are important in a marriage, in a relationship. You need humor because she's going to want that. You know, you're going to be the person that whoever you're spending your life with is going to spend the most time with in their lives. And if you're not funny or entertaining, or if you can't have a good laugh with her, then you're boring and stodgy, and she's not exactly going to be thrilled about spending hours with you.
One of the
A
things
good,
that um with this whole we're referring to the abstract man and woman interactions, and I've felt a disconnect between that and individuals. Like the difference among women in general, or the variety is basically the same order of magnitude, it feels like, as the difference between man and woman, and the variation within men of similar magnitude. And
mm, maybe,
of course there's
maybe.
the peak of the bell curves that we can refer to, but in that peak area there is a relatively small percentage of the whole, say 10%, and then it spreads out in all directions.
You can't give advice if it needs to cover an infinite spectrum of variation.
Hmm.
It's not possible.
But then since we in daily life deal with that very infinite spectrum, then the question is how to take useful but specific advice and apply it in the wider sense. I guess it's the discernment to judge when to apply a particular interaction pattern.
Yes. You're the only one who can have the specifics. You can't advise the specific because you're the one who knows the most detail about the situation because
Mm.
it's you and the other person. The advice is always going to be general, and it's going to be majority general. I'm not a big believer in the, you know, ridiculous amounts of variation hypothesis.
Mm.
I know it's true, but the percentage of people that vary dramatically from the norm for each sex is low. So I think it's very easy to say women do X thing or advice for women about X, Y thing, whatever,
I wonder if it's the
and have it
variation life.
apply to 80%
Mm.
of the target group.
Fully acknowledging that there will be exceptions to every rule and statement.
Yeah. Um, I understand why you're saying this, but I always hate this argument.
Yeah.
Um, yes, there is outliers always, and no rules are absolute because this is a chaotic world. Advice and generalizations are, in general, applicable, but in exceptions are not. And I'm not interested in the exceptions because it's your job when engaging with the exceptions to come up with the specific rules that apply in that specific situation or the action. But in general, developing something like a sense of humor would be helpful for most women. If the specific woman that you're courting, it is less helpful or not for some reason, which I think is probably extremely rare, but 100% certainty it's the case somewhere, then having developed that yourself and having the ability to do that would also have simultaneously developed some other skill that would probably be useful in the same circumstance. Training yourself in any direction doesn't only train you in that direction. It has knock-on effects. And even if the specific isn't applicable in your specific weird edge case circumstance, whatever knock-on effects probably are, i.e. confidence for the comedian thing, or ability to come up with witty replies, even if that be logical.
Mm. I'm wondering if what is it? Part of where this might be coming from psychologically is a worry that I'm the edge case.
Go on.
Um, it's a little bit nebulous, uh, with a few apparently random supporting points. I think.
Feel that out.
Let's see what comes up. One of them was an article I read recently, which how do I phrase this? Talks about the structure of the psyche and how typically it was expressed in esoteric terminology, so the various layers of the subtle body of a human, where you've got the physical, the energy, the imagination and emotional, and the abstract, and each one has a gender, and generally they alternate, but they don't always. And if you've and people with sort of opposite patterns will work much better than people with not sort of not meshing patterns, and about 10% of the population, according to this structure, has, say, if you're male on the physical, then it would go from there up, male, female, male, female, typically alternating, but 10% of the population would have male, female, female, male. And this is represented in the structure of a observed psychology, because this comes from real world observations of people, then that's presented in an abstract way. But you have the easiest way to pick the differences are how people are creative and get inspired, where there's the anecdote of behind every great man is a woman supporting him, or something along those lines, that men need to be inspired by a woman in order to bring forth something new from inside themselves. Whereas women will, great creative women, tend not to have a man behind them. They don't need that. They have that inspiration themselves and then draw from the world around them instead of from within, in order to create something new, as in most fan fiction is written by women, because they are drawing from the world around them as raw material to use as a manifestation of the inspiration that they feel within themselves. And I suspect I have one of those 10% configurations where it goes male, female, female, male, because I'm always thinking of new things, and I don't need someone else to let me be inspired or to give me that nudge, but I draw things from the surrounding world, like new combinations of things I've seen, and oh, I can do that, and from stuff I've seen, and combine it this way, and oh, that's new, but it's a recombination of things I've seen. And so the concern that comes out of that, which links into the general sense that I'm a little bit weird in the social spectrum, potential for a slight bit of Asperger's or something, that a worry that general advice might not work for me, and I need to find someone who's a little bit odd, and it's probably a pointless anxiety, but subconscious is not logical.
Hmm.
Because I've
Do
reveled in
you
my oddness, in a sense. I've used it to define my social niche, in the sense of I'm the slightly odd nerd who's interesting in his own ways, but I am not trying to be normal, because I am not. And so, yeah, that's got possibly a downside. But yeah, you were saying?
well, I think the last part's very good. I was going to say, do you think that would make it difficult for you to find a partner that actually works well or attract one?
It would reduce being of an unusual personality myself. However, that's expressed in whichever terminology set you would use, would probably mean that the pool of people who could work with me would be smaller. So for most people, it's like, to pluck a number out of the air, say most people could get along well enough with 25% of the opposite gender. Um,
Sex.
Opposite sex, yeah. For me, I suspect it's more like 5%. And then there's all the circumstances of life that put other constraints on it. And I worry, not in a logical sense, but I feel worry that I don't have many numbers to play the numbers game with. If that makes sense.
Do you also get comfort from that? Because you didn't say my weird personality quirks make it less likely for me to find a partner because a normal partner isn't going to be interested. You went on the big spiel about specifically why you think you have this weird personality and the different layers of spiritual gender, as you call them, and how that meshes. It was interesting to me that you picked that metaphysical belief as your scaffolding and reason why things are difficult for you. And I have a sneaking suspicion that you want that to be the case, as it would remove blame or self-judgment from you if you were to be unsuccessful in your endeavor. It's a little convenient.
That's plausible, though. I think there's also what is it? The sense of being of not fitting in socially, which has
I
been a
agree with the
consistent
general
thing.
point.
And
I
then it's
definitely agree
like,
with the general point.
and then I think the seizing on that scaffolding was, at least it feels like that was more well, this would make sense of it. Here's an explanatory structure that is consistent with my experience and that I could possibly build on further to understand and work with things.
Mm. Oh, I think you're right in the general sense. Naturally, being an oddball character would give you reduced numbers from average people.
Though then
But I don't
again,
think you're right in the absolute, because the outsider is the most attractive in the female psyche.
oh, in the sense of, oh, he's not, there's a
Yeah, he doesn't play the
dismissal.
game.
Yeah, he's not just
Yeah.
another one of those sorts. What is he? Yeah.
Yeah,
Mm.
because most people play the game and lose,
Mm.
and they still find partners.
And those people who have no interest in the middle of the bell curve, who are themselves off to one end, will be more likely to notice someone who's in their area because the concentration of people similar to them is lower anyway.
I think you're underestimating women in general, actually,
In the sense of
now that I think about it.
their ability to assess men, or
What's the archetype of the hero?
the one who goes out and beats the dragon.
Yeah, he goes out to the unknown.
Hmm.
Person who plays the normal game isn't doing the unknown.
Yeah, because the image I had in my head, like Hercules, big and buff guy who goes out and fights the monster and then comes back and has a big drink with his mates or something.
Well,
Hmm.
okay. I know it's a weird analogy, but think of the analogy of Jesus. Yeah, I get it. Christian faith. Put all that aside. He's a mythological figure in our culture. And he's a figure who showed up and changed everything. He changed all the laws. He was constantly battling with the established norms of their society. He was an outcast. But he's the hero, the redemptive figure. The the true heroes are always outcasts until they bring the thing that's valuable from the outside in. It's not the knight who is the king, you know, who's already got the position, who goes out and does the dragon slaying, who's the great hero. It's the wanderer who was shunned and finds redemption in the act of requiring something valuable in the wilderness and bringing it back to the community. Being the outsider is intrinsically attractive to most women for that reason.
Hmm.
I think you're underestimating women in general. So I think the majority of women find that attractive, more so than dodgy, boring, plays by the rules guy. Sensible's not sexy. Wild, eccentric, weird, mysterious. Women like the archetype of the hero. And the hero is someone who transforms the world, who takes the old order and reestablishes it as new order through the process of engaging with chaos.
Something that came
And
to
you can't
mind.
do that as someone who's inside the game.
Yeah, well, what someone who the hero is someone who changes the world, and the thought arose of by first changing himself.
Yeah. Now think about a starving artist, which is like the super attractive figure for most women. Like, yeah, you have the rich, handsome CEO, but then the other half is like starving artist. Guy on the couch with a guitar who has talent but hasn't done anything with it. It's that potential to change things. You're underestimating your own value and also underestimating the degree to which that was actually perceived as valuable by the majority of women, not the minority.
I wonder if now that's definitely plausible, and I'm thinking of a comment you made about having been party to these um, journeys of self development. You made a comment about being surprised that I hadn't found anyone yet, and a large part of that is probably not putting myself out there to the necessary degree. But I'm wondering whether remnants of rem, remnants, remaining scars from the ex could, well, probably contributing to that in a even if I think I'm valuable, not someone else won't necessarily type
Mm.
sense. Oh, bringing up some memories of things she said in anger.
Okay, jumping on that. I see you when I say I'm surprised you haven't met someone, I both am surprised and I'm both also not. Because from the way I see it, you have absolutely everything you need, except you're missing your masculine strength. And I'm confident that you're missing that because she deprived you of it intentionally.
Because I feel like I can manifest that on my own, but in a social situation with others, it's different. Like if it's just me driving to work and sort of thinking while I'm driving and listening to some appropriately emotionally toned music,
Hmm.
then I can feel really strong and powerful on my own in the car. In a social environment, it's a different story.
Well, yeah, I guess that's the problem.
So it's not
You were emasculated by her over the course of how long were you married?
um oh that would be yeah, 3 years
Mm.
and together as students for a year and a half, 2 years before that. So 4.5 to 5 years together.
I understand what it's like. In the early days before my wife changed, when she was like your ex, she did the same thing to me. Um, I'm guessing that I'm lucky enough to have a temperament that was less affected by it, but I was certainly affected by it.
Hmm.
I was much more of a monster when we met originally, and a lot more of a monster years before that, before I'd met her at all. And I've had to claw it back, and it hasn't been easy, and I'm still working on that. I'm still too apologetic. I'm still too anxious and nervous because of those attacks. And having spoken to her about this, I can tell you for a certainty that what your ex did to you was intentional. You were a victim. Someone that she wanted to humiliate, someone that she wanted to rip to pieces for fun.
It's probably positive that well, probably the reason why a lot of this path has happened, that the mental response to the idea of me being a victim is a sort of a mental roar at that concept, not rejection as such, but a sort of I'm coming to get you at that concept. Like,
Yeah, you should have many swear words in your mind when you think of your ex. Not pity, not, oh, what a poor broken creature, but very many hostile adjectives.
I've deliberately not wanted to wish harm in the sense of to take
You
it to
say
the
that.
well in the okay, someone who's sitting there brooding about how much they hate someone else is inflicting more harm on themselves than anyone else, and it's not making anything better for anyone, and
Yes, but you
that's
can't deny the parts of you that are angry at her their justification.
yes,
You
and
can't just let them not have their voice.
that's the balance that I don't know how to strike.
Hmm. It's hard to tell which side you're erring on, but yeah.
In the sense of whether I'm being too nice or something else, or
Well, you certainly were when we first started talking about her.
hmm.
And over the time that we've talked about her, I think your perspective has changed for the better. And I imagine that certain parts of your subconscious are happy about that. But it's hard to say because it's not
Hmm.
something that we've, yeah, that part in particular is not an area that we've touched on in great depth. So I couldn't really comment. Mm.
It's annoying to have to still have contact with her in the sense of I can't just block her because she has some right to talk to her son, even if she basically never um, puts any effort
Why?
into making that call.
Why? Why does she have right?
I don't have a good answer for why. I think it comes from the relationship she has to him gives her the right. And from his side of the equation, it's a bit clearer that um, knowing, well, some contact, although no, then it gets blurry again in other ways, that he has a right to be able to have contact with her. With the positive, as in, I don't think I have the right to. Lots of complication because it's like, is the contact with her positive for him? And it's the sort of thing where I don't want to act unless I have a well thought out position because it's not a small decision.
It doesn't matter what her relation to him is if she doesn't have a relationship with him. If she's not being his mother, then she's not his mother. Whether she birthed him or not is kind of irrelevant in my eyes. Now, if the things were on the other foot, and say she had custody, but you were trying to be involved and trying to be there for him and trying to do your part, then you would have a right to do that because you are trying to help. But for a parent who doesn't want to be involved, who doesn't want to spend time with them, who doesn't want to help, then they give up their rights as far as I'm concerned. If you're not going to be a part of the person's life, then fine, don't be a part of their life. But that doesn't mean you get to just butt your head in, once every 3 months to annoy their ex-partner and torture them in some way that you want to, while pretending that you're moral and virtuous because, oh, I'm speaking to my son. As far as I'm concerned, if she doesn't want to be there and she's not making an active attempt to be there, then what is best for your son is for you to find a new partner and for her to be forgotten. And then he can go and track her down when he's an adult and, ask her all sorts of questions and have an awkward relationship like I did with my father. But the person who's there is the parent, birthed or not.
I'll have to think about that and get second opinions and think about it some more.
Hmm.
Because
I used to be on the other side of that. I really did. But
mm,
then I heard a story about a man who had a child with a partner, and then he cheated on the partner, and she left him and took the child. And she found someone else, and they're raising the kid together, and they have, a farm out somewhere, and the kid doesn't ever see them. And he's like living in his parents' basement, and he's complete pathetic. And then he was talking to someone about wanting to take his child back because it's his child and he thinks he has rights. Like, no. No, you don't. Because you'd be breaking up a well put together family. It doesn't matter whether it's your seed or not. It matters what's best for the child. And if the child has a good, stable home, and even if the, other person there isn't biologically the mother or father, it doesn't matter. If you can't provide the life for the child that's good for them, then what does it matter? Is it about the parent or is it about the child? That's what it comes down to in my eyes.
I'm thinking
What's
of the
best for
last
the kid?
time she had a video call with him. She spent most of the time um, saying, "Stop moving the phone. You're making me feel sick," or "You're giving me a headache by moving the phone. Can you hold it still, please?" And because
Yeah.
he was holding the phone, and
Well, it's a hard one to comment on
yeah,
because, like, the phone should have just been on the table or something, so the kid couldn't touch it. Realistically, because obviously the kid's going to move it about and make it a mess.
yeah.
But from previous conversations that you've had about her showing up and not talking to the child but torturing you about her romantic interests or whatever, not in it for him.
Hmm.
Is that a funny thought?
Hmm.
Wonder if you'll hate listen to this one day.
Me?
Hate watch. I suppose we're on the video streaming platforms. Hate watch. That'd be entertaining. I'd kind of love to hear about that.
Me watching this in the future?
Yeah, I get a kick out of that.
Oh, there's a lot to get through. I have my doubts I'll get through it. It would feel rather narcissistic.
Yeah. Well, we got a lot of work to do,
Yeah. I was
but we're
just
going strong.
I was just thinking about the other figures in my son's life and his school teacher, and something that uh, the kids in his class know me because I did a parent help morning there one day, and I should do one of those again. And um, oh, something which is a bit reassuring to me in the good dad sense is that the other kids in his class like me. And there's this one girl, and I wonder if her dad's around or something, but she's come up several times, and probably having seen me give Tassie cuddles, she's tried to give me cuddles, and I just sort of stand there, not and say in a friendly voice, like, I'm not your dad, and not grabbing her back in any way, just
Yeah.
sort of arms up or arms down by my sides. It's like, I'm not your dad, and not pushing her away. And she was trying to initiate some slightly rough play in the way that kids like to be thrown around a little bit.
Mm,
And it's like, hey, teacher, I don't know how to. Um,
yeah.
this isn't quite appropriate, and I don't know how to respond to it because she's not my daughter. And
I
so,
hate that because it wasn't always the case.
hmm,
And there was a time when all adults would behave as your parent,
hmm,
whether they knew you or not. And people weren't freaked out about accusations of such things because an accusation meant nothing. And people didn't do it. Kids used to go and play with other parents down the street or other adults who didn't have kids. And that was normal in society.
I guess if,
Yeah, there was risk, but it was better.
yeah, if that risk manifested, I suspect the consequences to fall on the head of those who had acted wrongly would be quite
Yeah.
very
We're
rapid
too
social
worried about yeah.
ostracizing.
We're
Yeah.
we're too worried about never having anyone be a victim of crime to the point where we've strangled our society rather than, you know, life is full of risks and you punish people who do horrible things.
Hmm.
We went far to the other side and now it's all prevention and oh poor this person, they probably had a terrible childhood. Getting a little off topic, but it's a sad thing. Like I've had kids do similar things with me and you sort of wish that you could engage with them the way that you would your own child. But you
Hmm.
know that you can't. And it's doubly brutal because you know that the kid's trying to engage with you because they can't engage with their own parent.
Hmm.
Because all they want is attention. That's all it ever is. And if their parents don't give them attention and a random adult does, they're going to cling to that adult like for dear life. Because, you know, attention from an adult or attention from a parent is might as well be life to a child. Neglect is a threat of abandonment. And children are biologically aware of their mortality, same as everyone else. They can sense it even if they don't understand it.
Hmm. And the known threat of, if someone stops taking care of me, that's danger is sort of built in.
Yeah, they'll just get stress and cortisol all the time and then they'll act out to get attention
Hmm.
because, you know, having a parent who abuses you because they like to abuse you is better than having a parent who abandons you to die in terms of evolution. Because at least the one who abuses you for enjoyment will feed you because so they can do it again tomorrow.
Hmm.
If they can't get a reaction of love, then they'll try and get a reaction of hate.
Yeah.
It's just survival tactics. And it's not like it's conscious on their part, but it's brutal on their system. And they
Hmm.
sure as hell pay for it.
There's one, oh, I'm not sure if she's a mother or a grandmother who walks two girls to school, and she seems like she's had a very tough life to me. It's like her face looks haggard, like deep lines and like there's I don't know if she's had the impact of drugs. I wouldn't say no, but she always looks worn down and
Cortisol, probably.
yeah, and timid towards me as I walk past and say a friendly hello,
Mm.
which that speaks loudly to me. And she's got these two girls, and she
Do you
is
understand that?
sorry.
Do you understand how someone would have that with you?
Well, I suspect she's had violent relationships with men, is the what I'd
Yeah, but I mean, you.
in any more than the sense that I'm a man and the negative associations she possibly has with men.
Yeah, more than that. Specifics.
As in, could I be a threat?
Yeah, what?
Well, I'm aware of the physical potential for me to cause harm. I'm aware that that exists, and it's the
I was more making a comment on appearance.
in the sense of how I could look as I walk along from a sort of
Yes.
okay, yeah, just a momentary glance type perspective, yeah. Um,
Yeah, like are you aware of how you could be interpreted in that way based on your appearance? I'm not saying you should change anything, but I just thought it was an
hmm,
interesting note because you strike me as someone who has this, I am lovely and kind, and everyone sees me as lovely and kind attitude.
hmm. Well, I'm tall. I'm on the taller side, so I'm 5'11", I think, and that's 180 centimeters. So I'm not short.
Really? You're
And
not 6 foot?
no, my brother's 6 foot.
Okay.
Yeah,
Sorry, you're ridiculously tall compared to me. I thought you were a lot taller than that.
yeah. Well,
Yeah.
yeah. Being a lot taller than you is not difficult to
It's
achieve.
you can yeah, yeah. I'm not gonna get butthurt about comments about that, mate.
Yeah. But yeah. So I have been trying to have a stronger presence, but that feels like it's a slightly cop out answer. I feel like there's because I don't see myself as threatening,
Okay.
and the kids in the classroom don't see me as threatening. They'll run
Yeah,
up, they'll wave, and yeah.
kids get the vibe more than anything. And it's the kind attention. But you in the past, I don't know if it's the case anymore because you've spoken about this, but you don't dress cleanly. You have a sort of you have an appearance of someone who's a bit unkempt. Maybe is that the right word?
Who puts on
That makes
clothes
sense.
to someone who puts on clothes to perform the function of covering himself rather than to project an image.
Yeah, your clothes are all they're clean, but they're all a little rough. Does that make sense? Like they don't match perfectly to present any kind of image. They're not clean, straight lines. There's a bit of crinkle in everything. There's a bit of thickness to things. It's sort of partially due to the secondhand or old nature of a lot of it. And then that paired with the beard gives you sort of a I don't look after myself super well image. And someone who is, a tall man who has that kind of image to an elderly woman who's had, say, history of that is a lot of warning signs, a lot of red flags.
Hmm.
That's all I was touching on.
The possible association being I don't care about myself much and I care about others even less.
Yeah, maybe.
Hmm. Yeah, but then that's getting into assumed psychology of the other person, which is highly speculative.
I don't know. It's
Hmm.
just something I was thinking about. A man who is clean shaven and clean dressed with a good haircut and presentable strikes me as, I don't know. It seems to me that a person like that, while also still intimidating in their own way, is not intimidating in a could be unstable way.
Hmm.
Does that make sense? It's hard to be very well presented and dressed and unstable, which perhaps is why it's a marker that society likes.
Hmm.
Huh. I just sort of got that. Right, that's why everyone likes men who are clean shaven. Because you have to do it by routine on a daily basis, which means you have to have routine.
So
I
then
get that.
is the because beards seesaw in popularity and attractiveness. I'm wondering if the other side is what is it?
Well, last time I saw you, although I don't think that's the case anymore because you've done something about it, your beard wasn't just like a nice beard. It was pretty mountain man. It was pretty big,
Hmm. It's
big
heading back
bushy
toward
number.
that. I need to get another haircut. Might take Tassie for a haircut tomorrow.
Yeah, I don't think
Hmm.
a beard is a problem, but I think it's where it's and sort of this is not at all attempted to be trimmed or styled or kempt in any way. This is just, you know, out of control beard. Sends a bit of a message of like, oh, I'm not. I don't know. I'm not criticizing, and I'm not saying you should change anything. It's just a thought that cropped up in my mind when you mentioned her unease about you, and I wondered if you had considered that due to your nature.
I hadn't considered that it might be due to my style of dress and appearance rather than the sheer fact of me being a man.
Or on top of, probably.
Hmm. Hmm. Hmm.
I wasn't going anywhere with that. It just sort of cropped into my brain.
Yeah, yeah, it's hmm, interesting side discussion.
Yeah, appearance and presentation and how that ties into social norms. I imagine it also goes along a bit with your, being outside the normal game thing.
Hmm.
That the less manicured look is sort of an indication of, hey, I'm not doing the normal thing.
Hmm. I'm not peacocking,
Yeah.
which
Although I would also say that for a person of our generation, dressing well is the outside the normal thing now.
hmm.
So things change with time.
Yeah.
Like I remember when I had to wear a shirt, a black shirt, and trousers and shoes for work when I worked in a restaurant. Um, and because of that, I started wearing a full suit everywhere, full black for a while, and then, you know, straight black and white, both at work, for fun with tie and everything. Although my manager started to get annoyed because I looked better than him and was told to stop doing it. Um, but I noticed whenever I went around town doing that way that no one else did it anymore. There wasn't, I could tell the people who had serious money and they weren't dressing like that. and it was cheap clothing. I didn't spend money or anything.
Mm.
But I also noticed that I got attention everywhere I went. And not like, oh, isn't that weird attention? But that sort of attention from women, and then also from every interaction I had with any business ever. I never had anything like that. Like, I was given free tours of places that I really shouldn't be at and all kinds of things like that. But it was great fun. I loved it. And I think that's because it was not a thing that was done. It was a marker of status in the old school way, but it was also outside the norm. So it had that other side effect of being a person who's bucking the rules. Everyone else was wearing, jeans and a t-shirt or a hoodie, regardless of their social status, and I was wearing a full clean suit.
Mm.
I don't know, it struck into my head.
There's oh, a psychological interference with the idea of doing that myself because association with arrogance or hmm, do I
You
want to
seem to
stand
have
out in that
a
way?
you seem to have a thing about arrogance and confidence.
Hmm.
Like, this always comes up. You seem to think that elevating yourself or thinking of yourself as valuable means that you think of everyone else as less than you. Here's
It's
a question.
it's interesting that that sounded logically consistent to me.
Hmm. As a wee jab, maybe it's something to do with your polytheism thing. Um, is a person lower down on a social hierarchy equal to you?
Mixed internal messages on that one. It's like in terms of worth treating with respect and having a conversation with them, like a sort of friendly acknowledging nod of equals, or um, just having a friendly hi person I met in the shop and can relate to you about something type of conversation to think of things that have happened recently. Um, yeah, everyone's equal in that sense, but there's another feeling of to elevate yourself is to say that you are above others, and there is an internal conflict with those, or an internal incompatibility between those.
Hmm. Define elevate in this context.
Badly defined to start with, but or not clearly defined in my head, but dressing fancy is the simplest version. Um, yeah, I don't have a good manifested version of that concept, like of what it looks like, because there's the idea of someone who's rich and who is arrogant and a prick and treats those around them as tools or servants. And then there's
Hmm.
the idea of someone who has elevated themselves by dressing well and eloquence of speech and such things, but by then treating the people around them with inviting speech and in a friendly manner as though you're you're surrounded by equals who are worthy of your respect and help, kindness, so on, that you elevate everyone else around you by doing that. Which you're pulling everyone up. You're not climbing up yourself. Hmm.
So, what makes you think that you would be the former and not the latter?
I think it's fear of being the arrow, fear of
What,
oh,
becoming the former?
yeah, by associated concepts or feeling like
Hmm.
an imposter and dressing like that.
Okay, well, the imposter thing's something else. But I think there's something to the idea that you think that if you were to succeed, you would look down on others. Or if you were to attempt to elevate yourself, that you would by necessity be looking down on others or treating others poorly.
I have noticed psychological impulses in that flavor, in the sense of, like I talked about it before, of seeing someone on the street who looks. Oh, that's interesting. Different categories of uh, assessment. There's would I want to integrate you into my social circle, or would I want to have a relationship with you? And do I meet you as a friend who I've just met? Because there's like, if I look at, because I'm a straight guy, if I look at a woman and let the um, potential mate assessment sub-circuit in the brain, however you, everyone's got it, and I'm sure you know what I mean. But if I
No
have
need to
that,
be uneasy about it.
oh, how to, I've deliberately avoid, like, I hear
Being
guys.
apologetic for your nature.
Okay, let's tackle this one. I hear guys talking about, oh, this girl's a five, or this, or she's a two, or she's an eight, and so on. And I've always found that a bit crude and objectifying and distasteful. And so um,
Agreed.
I've avoided, I've tried to avoid thinking of women like that. But there is also if you look at someone and make an assessment of would I want to have a relationship with this person, first impressions, there's a there are a bunch of scales and ratings on those scales that sort of pop up. There's a judgment of position in the overall social hierarchy, which that's an interesting preconception to have, considering some other stuff. But
It indicates
there's
many other things.
yeah,
Marker, like most things.
yeah, the image I got in my head for that one was a woman in high heels and a red dress who's had her hair done recently, and obviously there's money involved there. So
Well, sexual signaling.
yeah, and the opposite end of the scale is a woman who's um,
Doesn't look after herself.
yeah, and looks like she's had a hard life, probably with a bit of drugs involved for whatever reasons. Her, like someone else's hard life, it's like if a hard life involved that, then I'd beyond on the first impression stage, I don't think any judgment on a personal sense can be made about someone like that. But in a would I want to involve myself with that person, it sort of moves them into the in a
Wait,
romantic
hang on.
sense,
Of course it
especially.
can. You have a right to judge. That's That's your most fundamental right, is to judge others.
But you can't know the particulars of anyone's circumstances, and there will
Yeah,
always
but
be factors.
infinite sympathy infantilizes everyone. Is that not the right word? Whatever. You can't have your basis for life being sympathy for all people in all situations. They're not children, they're adults.
And
You
looking
don't
at them
treat
like
them like
that
babies.
is.
Your
Oh,
job is to look at a person and go, do you have your shit together? Are you trying to get your shit together? Do I want you in my life? Because if you're not trying to get your shit together, or if you're not trying to and aren't succeeding, then you shouldn't be around me because I am. It's not a judgment of you're a lesser person than me and therefore I should not spend. No, it's you can love strangers who are having horrible lives, but you can look at them and go, wow, you've made a lot of bad decisions. And I don't want people who make bad decisions around me
hmm.
or my future.
That's a good one because I think I'd conflated some of that. So the
Well, it's not surprising. You know, our entire culture is feminized to the umpteenth degree. You got to figure out what to do with that. It's been like
oh,
the last 6 months. It's
I'm
so bad.
I'm just getting over another bug.
Oh, okay.
It just hit
Oh,
this
good.
week.
Because it does seem a bit more dramatic than normal at the moment.
Yeah.
No, it's just like our entire culture is just feminized to the hilt. And yeah, you can't. The feminine ethos is to treat everyone as either a complete predator or an infant that needs protecting. But you can't have deep sympathy for all people at all times because it's abused all the time. That's what the lowest class of society does in terms of morals. They prey on the understanding and sympathy of others, which is, by the way, why all the psychopaths are pushing the society to be as understanding, as kind, as caring as possible, particularly to criminals, so they can do crime and get away with it.
Oh God,
So they
there's a
can be
nightmare.
manipulative and deceptive and get away with it because, oh, it's not your fault. You had a bad childhood. Your mother didn't love you enough. Yes, that's why it is. I'm going to stab you and steal your money some more because I can. Your job as an adult is to make judgments on other people. Are you worth my time or are you not? Are you trying to make the world better or are you trying to make the world worse? Are you trying to make yourself better or yourself worse? You know, you're not looking for a partner who's had a rough life, but they're really a good person underneath. Because everyone's got a soul, right? There's something good to find in everyone, but you're not looking for the gold that their mother would love about them. You're looking for their general life prospects.
You're looking
Do
for
you look after your
the people who
do you value yourself?
manifest. Yeah, the
Are you
people who.
aiming up?
Yeah.
Sorry.
It's like the overly analyzed version of that that's collated, that's manifested out in my head, is that you're looking for the people who manifest the pattern you want to reinforce. You want to,
Yes.
yeah.
Judgment is everything. I mean, every time that you don't sleep with someone is judgment.
There was an anecdote I heard recently that well, stumbled across on YouTube, so need to get rid of that part. But a guy was talking about how he'd had such negative reactions from women when he'd turned down their advances that he just stopped turning them down. And
Oh,
yeah, it's like, yeah, well, maybe some filter, maybe that would be a good filter.
yeah.
Yeah, the
Yeah.
ability to say no, I don't want to reinforce this pattern. I don't want this pattern you have in my life.
You don't enable addicts. You don't enable bad behavior.
Or narcissists, and yeah.
Yeah, there was a yeah, I don't know if you remember, it was one of my favorite videos of all time, but it got deleted from YouTube. It was the name's on the top of my tongue. Blonde lady made a video about fat people. She got reamed for it. And she was going hard after them, like hard after people because it's bad. And she had this line about you know, oh, I'm fat shaming. It's like, you're goddamn right. Shame people with bad behaviors until they fucking stop. And it's like, brilliant. Thank you. Understanding and sympathy for a person who is misbehaving is enabling.
Mm.
You
And
don't go, it's okay, Mr. Alcoholic, you can have another drink. You say, no, that's bad, stop.
yeah, and it's like to have that. There is a place for that type of sympathy, like primarily with children. Like
Yeah.
children need that. They also need parenting, which involves judgment of their behavior.
Yeah, it
But
needs to be both.
yeah,
I understand, I get it, you're a kid, you impulses, it's okay, I love you. But that was still wrong.
mm, yeah, but it's not just for an adult to treat them purely with that sympathy. Because I'm just trying to pass it onto the adult frame of reference, because there are adults who need sympathy. There are times when adults need sympathy, but there are also to have sympathy without judgment. I'm I'm not I'm not quite able to enunciate it out, but it feels like a disservice to them, like enabling of a different kind. It's like,
I think it's akin to theft in some ways.
hmm,
You're you're stealing their agency. Oh, it's okay that you did that bad thing because it's not your fault because this thing that happened to you. So you can take all the blame and responsibility off your shoulders and continue to do the thing that's bad for you, even though you like it. It's it's about as backstabby and, mean girls as it can get.
hmm,
It's okay, you deserve to have more cake. You're not fat, you just have an eating problem because of, you know, that person was mean to you. Go on, have some more. You you're taking their agency and you're encouraging them to do bad things.
it's
You're
like
not helping them.
you can have sympathy for someone's circumstances and even the consequences of their own actions. You can have sympathy for it, that I see that this is hard. And what's hard for one person may be easy for another, and so on. Everyone's different, but something can be hard for someone, and that can be with sympathy. But that doesn't change the fact that the situation is bad and that elements of it are often self-inflicted, although that varies between individuals. But you can say that a circumstance is, oh, am I just dancing around the idea of judging people for for their apparent bad decisions and allowing for
Well,
the potential for
just
making a mistake there?
probably. Society has reinforced in us, in particular, our generation and sex, that any form of discrimination and judgment is wrong. So it's pretty deeply ingrained in us that I'm judging, that must be bad. I'm not surprised. Still something you should work on by the conversation we had about agency.
Mm.
But the unease that you feel, oh, that's got to be connected to your ex too. There's no way that that's not connected. Hey, what I think you're doing is wrong. Stop judging me. You're an evil bastard. Am I wrong?
Mm. I'm not sure. There's probably a link there, but it's not only there. Because as you were saying, the whole of society these days has pushed it as a positive value. The we had
Love and understanding always.
mm, by one by one analysis I saw, we had a masculinization of the structure of society that then led to the feminist movement as a in its origins as a response to that, and then now we're having a feminization of it, and that's likely to lead to a masculinism movement in reply, and oh, the pendulum swings.
Oh, there's a good quote that someone wrote about this, and it's escaping my mind. A critic of the modern church and why it's falling apart. And it mirrors our society quite dramatically.
Is this that guy who had the Oxford debate where he said homosexuality is wrong? I still love them as
No,
people.
no.
Uh,
I saw the thumbnail for that, but I didn't click it.
I think it would be up your alley.
Probably that sounds about right.
Yeah.
Um, but devil's in the details with all that thing.
Oh, certainly. I haven't watched it, but from what I understand, he said basically, these are the Christian teachings. Church, you're not following what the Bible says. This is what our God says we should do. That's what I aim to do. We still love people, hate the sin, not the sinner, da 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 da. But it was like, these are my principles and my morals that I am standing by. And it's like, okay, respect, you're standing by what you say. Arguing whether it's right or wrong is a different thing, but it's like respect, you're standing by your principles.
Yeah, I'm a big fan of like if you're gonna be in that way, you don't get to pick and choose.
Hmm.
And I mean, there's some rather good arguments to be made about, how far society has gone off the bend in terms of sexuality since we decided as a society that non-standard sexuality is not just to be accepted but celebrated.
I
I'm not
think
making any claims either way on what I believe on that, but there's
hmm.
something.
I think the manner in which sexuality has been handled within our society up to, say, 1900 was ill suited to being opened up wholesale for a whole bunch of different sexual orientations, and the fact that it could handle a little bit, but then it starts to break down when you do too much, where I think other societies have in history had uh, structures that were more suited to handling a little more variation with it while maintaining the social cohesion. I'm thinking of well, ancient Greek comes to mind of being a bit more uh, open and accepting is the wrong word, but a bit more, yeah, that's a thing. So it was not, it did not stretch their existing structure. It just sort of fitted into it, and the society that descended from Victorian horror towards anything potentially sexual was not well suited to handle it because it was like, oh, sexual freedom, Freudian revolution, and it just sort of carried on in the same direction. And it's like, yeah, no, there's a too far there somewhere.
Well, we're in a world without judgment. I found that quote that I was thinking about,
Mm,
which is about the modern church, but you'll see the mirror to modern society.
mm.
Is that what the modern Christian religion is a God without wrath who brought men without sin into a kingdom without judgment through the ministrations of a Christ without a cross. The story is all forgiveness and all love, and it's forgotten all judgment. And the march to be all accepting, you've forgotten the principle of dividing good from evil, or right from wrong, or good from bad, even.
Because being loving and forgiving never meant that the evil would be brought into the fold. The
Yeah.
the yeah, a person could be loved and forgiven, but the evil is not a person. Like the word Satan means enemy, as far as I'm aware. It doesn't. It's
Yeah.
not an
It's
individual as
adversary.
such. Yeah, and so the idea that it's not an individual you are fighting, it is an abstract.
A spirit.
Different connotations
But
in my head than yours, but yes, I see what you mean.
it's the same thing. What we think of as an abstract idea that possesses many people is what the ancients thought of as a spirit.
Hmm.
Just we're more metaphorical than literal,
Yeah, and
or the separation is something that they didn't have. I'm not sure.
well, if you look at the way it works in the subconscious, to take a quote from somewhere else out of context that seems to apply in this too, was that every energy is a personality and every personality is an energy. Like you can
Mm,
think of a person in an impersonal way and a impersonal force in a personal way, like the wrath of a storm or a person being a whirlwind of chaos. Like you think of a person coming into an environment and generating chaos, or you think of a storm being wrathful against a structure and beat it and tearing down the trees. It's like you can think of them each in both ways, and so to think of evil or harm as an individual or a blind force, both are equally valid in treating it. And so maybe it's a
mm.
distinction without a difference in the psychological sense and deeper senses, maybe too. But yeah.
Both spirits are important, and you can't govern with one or the other. You need love and judgment.
Hmm.
Love without judgment is pathological. It's not a healthy relationship to have a partner whom you love and never judge.
It sounds like obsessive love, like the stalker
Yeah,
type.
it's it sounds like someone who would sacrifice themselves completely to me. It's like I have no criteria. You do whatever you want. I'll love you anyway. That's
Yeah, I was
you
thinking of
can't
it.
have a relationship without bounds.
I was seeing it from the perspective of like the stalker may love in their obsessive way the stalkee, and that can go so far as to I love you so much that I must kidnap you and keep you here and
Yeah.
That can
I
get
mean,
steadily more pathological the more mental illness you allow into the picture, but there are parallels
it,
between that and I must
I
do plastic
guess
surgery
you're
to make
right.
you look like
Yeah.
what what I want you to be because of
I,
how deep this pathological love is, and then yeah, you need to be a girl, not a boy, and
I think that, yeah, I think, like, I get what you're saying, and I think there's truth to that as much as I don't want to admit it. But I was thinking more of unconditional acceptance
mm,
being unhealthy. And I also just had a thought of if you have two parties and they you know, have contact with one another, but one party has absolutely no conditions on the relationship with the other party, could you even say there was a relationship? If there's no checks, if there's no restraints, if there's no limitations, then what is there at all binding them?
and the outsourced sanity too, that we outsource our sanity to those around us, and that's in the form of we act and watch the reactions of those around us and use that to inform our own states of mind. So by not having a judgment of someone else, we're withdrawing from them the portion of sanity that we could give.
I'm still really stuck on my last point.
The one way relationship without judgment.
Well, it's not a relationship. For a person to truly be without judgment and only have love, then they require no conditions from the other person at all. Which means the other person could just, like, not see them, speak to them, or have relationship with them at all. And the other person would still be like, "No, this is fine, I love you." That's not a relationship.
Because a relationship is two way.
It has to have conditions, or else there's nothing binding them. You know, if there isn't behavior that the other person finds unacceptable, then I don't see that there's even a relationship at all.
Hmm.
You know, how can you have a relationship with someone when you don't care? Yeah, that's the only analogy that I can come up with for absolute unconditional love is actually just not giving a shit about the other person. I don't care what you do ever is the same as I love you no matter what you do. That's the same statement.
Mm. It's amazing how often you get oh, the vices on opposite end of the spectrum sort of curving around to touch each other into a circle.
Yeah. Yeah, the horseshoe theory.
Mm.
I think that's the case because if you don't have you can't care about someone without judging them. Because if you care about someone, you want them to do well, which means that there are things you don't want them to do and things you do want to do, and that means you're going to judge their behavior. And if you have no judgment on them at all, and they can do literally anything from, you know, being the president to smoking crack, then you don't actually care about them.
So then what's
You just say that you
pathological
do.
judgment in contrast?
No, okay.
To try and
My
distinct.
instinctive reaction was to say, um, no compassion or understanding for any mistakes ever. But I feel like I need to ponder that more because There's got to be something more profound at the other end of the scale. Nothing that they do is ever good enough.
Hmm.
Judgment without love, which is complete judgment of you as in your entirety is unacceptable and you'll never be acceptable and nothing you ever do is acceptable. 100% judgment.
Everything is wrong versus everything is right.
Yes. Yes.
Yeah, where the balance between the two is some things are wrong, some things are right. And
Yeah.
you can be
Yes
more on
with
the
no.
wrong or more on the right in terms of an individual. You can say, there is some right here, there is some gold in your soul, but this pattern that I see in your life is not one that I want to have any part of.
Mm, yeah. You can't be pathological in either way. You have to understand, just like, look, not you for obvious reasons, but that doesn't mean that if I were to sit down with you and have a drink and hear your life story, that I wouldn't care about you and
Hmm.
wouldn't want things to go well. You know, it's a rare person who sits down and hears someone's story who's had a rough life and goes, wow, fuck you, I don't care, and leaves.
Hmm.
You know, everyone's like, Jesus, man, I'm sorry, and I hope things go well. That doesn't mean that you're going to invite them into your house.
Yeah, like I'm in a slightly rough looking neighborhood. I haven't had any issues, probably because I look slightly more rough than I'm aware of myself, as you were pointing out, but and because I don't look like I have that much. Um,
Oh, that's the other side, yeah.
yeah, but oh, also I guess because now this may be a misconception of mine, but the idea that there's a reasonable amount of social mixing, or maybe that's just on the cheaper end of the shops, like Couplands and Pack and Save and that, as opposed to New World and whatever a slightly boutique bakery would be. Yeah, that might be part of it.
Do you want to expand on that a bit? I don't
Okay,
quite.
okay, yeah.
Um,
My point is that, like, at the local playground, I met a guy who had some big pointy studs in his ears and things like that, and because he was sitting by the flying fox reading a book, which these days is a rare thing. And so my son was playing in the playground, and I was like, "Oh, what book are you reading?" Because like that's unusual to see a guy sitting there reading a reasonable
mm,
sized book too. And um, he was happy to chat, and we chatted about his interest in books, and turned out that what was it? His dad had walked out relatively young, and he'd had to sort of raise his siblings in a sense, and so he was the one who knew how to cook in the household. So he'd shoo them out of the kitchen because you don't know what you're doing. You're gonna mess it up. Get out. And he was running a bit of his own business where he could build a deck or build decks and stuff. And I don't get all the details, of course, but he seemed like an interesting guy who seems to have had a tough life, but at the same time, his outside appearance is uh, what is it? Fits the less economically advantaged layers of the society,
do you look
and
like someone who looked after himself, though?
he didn't look neatly put together. I am not skilled at judging that aspect. I'm not sure what to look for.
Huh,
Um,
that's an interesting observation.
which
Oh, wow. Okay. I think that's actually explains a lot. Um, your ability for judgment is underdeveloped.
Both
Your eye for
judgment,
judgment is
yeah,
underdeveloped.
both at myself and at the world.
Yeah, which perhaps that's something to do with the masculine projection energy that we've spoken about.
Mm.
I've I can't pin it together, but I've got a really strong feeling that they link in quite closely.
There was something I saw recently about the role of a mother versus a father. That mum's there to, what was it? It was a Jewish rabbi saying it, I think. Old guy with a big white beard, and he was saying that a mother's job is to be the coach, to encourage, to say you can do it, and then you take what you've developed to your dad, and he says, "Oh no, you still got to work on this bit," or "Okay, that's good, well done." He's the judge, and you can't be all judgment, and you can't be all coach, because you need both. You need to know when it's good enough, honestly, and you need the encouragement to get there.
Mhm. Jewish community's got some real interesting takes on those kinds of things. Some of the most mm, some of the stories that I've heard from them mm, some of the stories about judgment that have stuck with me the most are from that community. I remember hearing a story about a guy who was at some school, and he's sort of, going the teacher's like, "Oh, you need to do your Jewish prayers or whatever." And he's like, "Oh, I don't want to." And the teacher just goes, "Hmm." And then he says his name. "This kid doesn't want to. Who cares? It's not about you." And he described how that stuck with him for the rest of his life. And there's something about that that really clicks with me. Like, there's more important things than what you want to do. You do things that are right. I'm not saying that that is, but that stuck with me. And the other one was they have this Saturday lunch thing that's very sacred, where everyone gathers around the table and it's, no distractions, no technology, and it's a feed and they all talk. And it's all the adults. And the children aren't allowed to talk. And he described the first time that he spoke at that meeting. He was 12 or something. And he said something that was stupid because he was trying to impress everyone. And his father just turned to him and looked at him and said, "That was stupid." And then continued talking with the adults. And that also struck him of like, oh, okay, that was stupid. And if I'm going to say something at the adult table, I should damn well make sure that it's not something stupid. I don't know why, but those things always stuck with me. It's funny how a thing that sounds unimportant in the right moment of your life can have profound impact on you the way you view the world,
Hmm.
and how that can't, doesn't always translate to other people.
Yeah.
Advice has to be received in the right time and the right place for it to mesh with your brain.
Yeah. Or the idea that if a memory. It's annoying. If a memory pops up out of nowhere, it's probably doing that for a reason because there's something about it that's bothering you. And
Mm,
that memory of feeling like I'd upset my cousin or unfairly ribbed him. Yeah, that one has popped up a few times as a thing I'm ashamed of from my childhood type memory.
yeah, there's a lot to be explored there.
Hmm.
Hmm. Yeah, I don't know. It's hard to say with that one in particular whether it's something you did or something that he did. For all you know, it could be him being too sensitive about a thing. and that you should have done more. Or I don't know.
Maybe it's just the fact that there was the mismatch.
Here's a question about that, actually.
Hmm.
Um, he felt, at least as far as you said, that he felt hurt or that it was, unfair or mean.
Hmm. Because it was
Was
implying he
it?
was. Well, it was implying that he was of lower intelligence and that I was making fun of the idea that he was of lower intelligence because he was from the West Coast, which in New Zealand is more remote because it's on the other side of it's a thin bit of livable
It was,
land on the
but
other
you
side of a
also said it
mountain
was
range.
also sort of a reference to a self-deprecating joke in the same vein that he had himself made
Yes.
previously. Okay, so do you think it was over the line, regardless of how he reacted to it? Do you think it was mean or unfair?
Hmm. I feel like the structure I'm trying to use to judge it was built partly from it.
What, that all things are decided by he who has experienced the hurt?
That wasn't the. Well, hmm.
I know I'm taking it to the extreme, but no, it's part of the point.
That you don't denigrate someone. I think that was the moral I pulled out of that. That you don't denigrate
Was it a,
someone's abilities or character.
was it an insult or a joke?
I think I was trying to make a joke, but I felt like I'd strayed over the line into insult accidentally.
Hmm. Oh, it's hard to make heads or tails with this, but where I was going with that was, um, though he may have been offended or insulted by it, perhaps you in your own judgment could look at the situation and go, no, he overreacted. And that is a right that you have to do, to say, as a judgment, you are too sensitive of a person. That judgment would be acceptable or not morally wrong to make that judgment of another person. I made a bad joke, but you got too offended, and maybe you're just a little too sensitive, rather than I'm a horrible person
Because
for having made a bad joke.
the context is that his mum was the sort of rebel of her siblings. Um, she'd married a biker and she lived on the in a small country town, in a small, relatively isolated country town, and most of the rest of the cousins are have performed well academically, and I think that cousin's family, there's just him and his brother, were probably the lowest academically performing family.
Okay, so right, that was not just a joke, but there was sensitive history behind it for him.
As in the potentially hurtful grain of truth.
Yeah, I
And
could see how that would be over the line.
yeah, and he'd made a joke about it before, but then for someone else to joke about it.
Yeah, it's
Yeah.
one thing to be self-deprecating about something that you're sensitive about. You know, he could have been fishing for it. It's okay. Don't worry about it. Do you want to talk about it or something? With the original joke. I can see how that would be a sensitive topic and something that cuts a little too close to home.
Because his response to my bad taste attempt at a joke was not lashing out in any way. It was sort of disgruntled, sort of, "Oh, you don't need to say I'm dumb just because from the West Coast," and then a sort of a closing in rather than a lashing out.
Mm.
And
He's someone, yeah. This is the other thing. You pressed on a sore spot for him. Um, and you did it through a bad joke. And you felt bad about that. And I get that. You don't want to be unnecessarily cruel to people in bad circumstances. But there's also the case of, for a young boy, perhaps knock on the head of you're a little sensitive here is something of value. This is something I've heard from someone else, and I have my own issues with it because of my history, but I can see that there's something there for a person to, for a boy in particular, with another boy to sort of give him a bit of a nudge and say, hey, I noticed this sore spot that you have, that if I
hmm,
press on it, it hurts you. Maybe you should do something about that.
hmm,
And it's the unsophisticated way of doing it rather than saying, hey, are you okay? You know,
yeah, because this was probably 15 years ago, and while I'm not up with all the developments in his life, he's made something of his life in his way. He's got, was it a, oh no, it was working on drilling rigs in the West Coast backcountry, something like that. So you'd helicopter into a machine and work on that machine and helicopter out, and probably hard physical work and needing a bit of skill, not university or academically based like
yes.
the other cousins went to, but he's succeeded in his way.
Well, it's not something to look down on.
Absolutely. We all
You know,
we all need that every day. We all rely on that.
most people aren't smart, and intelligent people often have a habit of saying that if you're not smart, you're useless.
I've got a thing there that I now let me see if I can tease it out. Because one of the things about myself that I value most is my intelligence, which feels very self-centered, and there's something else there too. But because of that, I'm definitely aware of the value that we need from people who do the more menial jobs in life. Like you need people to pick up the rubbish and take it away to be processed or tipped in a landfill or whatever. You need people to do that job. It is an essential job. And frankly, there should be a appreciation day every year for the people who do the menial jobs without thanks. The people who go out in the snow to fix the power lines that came down. The people who pick up the rubbish every day that stinks and they take it away so that the city stays clean. The people who are out at night cleaning the streets. These people deserve thanks. But at the same time, because how I've judged myself as intellect focused, there is a sort of known mismatch when I look at other people in the world who don't measure up on that score, and it's like I know this measure is faulty, but it's still there, and yeah, it's a
Hmm.
because of that. I think, do I discount my judgment of others because I know my judgment of myself is not applicable to others, or hmm.
I don't know. I think that's something to think about.
Hmm.
I sort of feel myself slipping. I don't know. I do notice it's interesting that you made a note of, people who weren't super intellectually inclined, and then you went straight to like rubbish collector as your example for someone who's not. Which sort of illustrates the point, doesn't it?
But I'm assuming someone's intelligence based on their job.
No, you went straight for the worst possible example of the job. Like there's many, many noble professions that you skipped right over to go to the one that is notably disgusting as a marker of, oh, someone who's not intelligent picks up rubbish. I get that you were trying to hold those people up and say, hey, you do a great job, this is good. But, your example of the cousin was someone who works on machinery for an oil rig, drilling or something,
I'm not sure
which is
exactly what it is,
complex.
but some sort of machinery that he got helicoptered in.
Yeah,
It might have
well,
been to do with forestry or something, but
hard
mm,
work, complex work.
mm,
Like most work's pretty complex. Just because you don't sit in, a university office or whatever and do your models of your steam tractor or whatever.
mm,
There's just tradespeople, for a good example. It was a mark of a non-intellectual class.
mm. Yeah, because also if you've got a relatively repeatable skill in the sense of after you've taken the time to learn it and master the actions, it's repeating the actions that so IQ doesn't contribute to that. So,
People often forget intelligence is just the ability to learn quickly.
mm,
A person who's dedicated, but not that bright, can still be really good at what they do. It just takes them longer to learn it.
mm,
You know, a person can be an amazing electrician or plumber or carpenter and not be that bright, but they learnt the craft.
mm,
It just took them ages and they made mistakes. And yeah, I get that, but doesn't mean they're not great at what they do.
mm,
Not that I'm saying people in those positions aren't smart, because, I'm a farmer. It's not, a mentally intensive job. There's obviously advancement for those who are capable, as there is in any field, but I disdained the idea of being a part of the intelligentsia or doing an office job. And you
mm.
made note in one of our earlier episodes of it's seeming like the most intelligent and capable people in our societies are defecting.
The actually intelligent ones, not the ones who had managed to climb the ivory towers, which are looking more like
Yeah.
Towers of Babel these days.
Yeah, that sounds about right. Like, there are things I think I've said this before, but there are things that I would love to do. Like, I would love to be a nuclear physicist. I would honestly love that because the technology fascinates me and I want to be part of an energy solution, and I am actually concerned about having a clean planet. I would love to be a psychologist. I would love to be a doctor. I would love to be a nurse, literally, because these things fascinate me and I want to help other people. Really, I do. But I know I can't do those things because I'm required to lie in order to do them. And one entire field is just going to be shut down by my entire country. So I can't do it. I'm not If I can't trust the integrity of an institution, if it isn't aimed at the good, the true, and the beautiful, then it's not something that I can tolerate doing. I can't go and help software people exploit customers. I can't go and work, you know, in the medical field and be required by law to say things I don't believe. Same with psychology. It's infuriating. And I feel like I could do a lot better for society than being a farmer, but I can't do it because I know that I would be presented with a situation where I would be required to say something I don't believe, which would hurt someone else. And then I would refuse to do that and I would be fired. And I would lose my entire career and job. And then I would be wasted on society. And
Hmm.
or all that investment in me they would be wasted too. It's a no-win scenario and it only makes everything else worse. And dragging ourselves down with this crap. And those are only examples that I can think of. I imagine that, for everyone like me, there's another, 5 fields that they would want to go into.
I wonder if
I imagine the
this.
majority of fields are like that.
I
So,
wo-
go ahead.
I wonder if this is an element of a pattern that tends to drag societies. Oh God, I think I need to go to bed to let
Right.
the cough settle soon. But the pattern that
Yeah, I'm
drags
getting a bit
societies
tired.
down, like I think we need
Well,
to
yeah,
have,
truth is no longer the primary virtue or the
yeah,
primary goal.
yeah. Once
It's
the
subservient to other things.
once the society becomes socially senile, as the social structure moves through its natural course of aging, bunch of assumptions included in that statement, but anyway,
Yeah, which I do disagree with myself.
well, it's
Anyway,
theorizing that the revivification of a society breaks down sometimes, basically.
yeah,
And
I hear about.
if that revivification of the society, the continual reviving and renewing and changing as the situation in the world changes around it, doesn't keep up,
Mm,
then the existing patterns can become toxic and you can end up with entrenched power structures and all the things that you were talking about happening. And that could then be a common contributing factor towards the decline of societies. How far down that decline goes may depend on a galaxy of other factors, but the more precarious the situation of the society as a whole, the further down that decline can carry it. And the amount of work that's necessary to keep our society functioning as it is, the number of people engaged just in keeping the lights on and the water running and the streets clean and the supermarket stocked and so on and so on, may make us more vulnerable to that kind of breakdown, putting a vague upper limit on the complexity of a society. I feel like we need another
all I can
conversation on that
help think
topic.
is the yeah, all I can help is but think of the totalitarian states where everyone lies to about everyone or about everything to everyone all the time.
That
The second that
sounds.
society accepts that what is false is true, it's over. And it's only going to be clawed back by absolute commitment to the truth.
Hmm.
And I'm not surprised that we went that way because we lost faith in our religion and we all became atheist. And because our religion is Christianity, what that literally means is we lost faith in the redemptive, truthful word, and all that's left when you lose faith in that is power games. And that's all we got.
Yeah, everyone loses.
Yeah. Hmm. That just makes me think of a quote from Game of Thrones.
Mm.
And when you play the Game of Thrones, you win or you die. There is no middle ground. And that's a world where everything's based on power.
Mm.
And I think we should leave it there for the night
Yep,
because I'm
well,
very tired.
2 hours and 25 minutes of recording, so yeah.
Oh, Christ, really?
How about we call this one Judgment?
Yeah, something like that. I think that's a good one.
Okay,
There's some comment about women in there. I'll make it funny. Night, everyone.
good night.